So we're going to talk about, based on our book Albion Dreamtime, Re-enchanting the Isle of Dragons. And we're going to get straight on with it.
So, we are two people with a passion for the earth and for ancient wisdom. We are dowsers and we serve on the committee of the Wiltshire Dowsers. And we host wild walking weekends, dowsing workshops, shamanic cave gatherings, following ley lines, trips to stone circles and full moon gatherings in chambered tombs. And between us, we've been blessed to have published 13 books over 26 years.
Wow.
Nobody else would publish us, would they? So, as every good talk, it should be obligatory to start any talk with a 30-foot-long phallus, I think. I've already got all the women with a smile on their face, so that's good. So it's about looking back. We're talking about sacred landscapes today, but this actually appeared almost, without knowing in a lot of my earlier books like West Kennet, Longbarrow and the Cerne Giant, when we started to realise that the positioning of monuments in the landscape is of primal importance. Professor Chris Tilley, who's done a lot of work on Bodmin, he says landscape is everything. It's all about landscape setting, and I think Rory would often would confirm that sites aren't random on the landscape, very carefully chosen. And we thought we'd kick off with this rather jovial example to start with. The Cerne Giant, some of you might have been to see this rather upstanding fellow on the Dorset landscape, and I did a whole book about him, the astronomy, because I'm a bit of a nerd as well. I've been doing astronomy and geology since I was a kid, and this comes in handy now. I can see why I was being nurtured in that direction. The natural science, maths and physics. So, but yeah, give me a natural science subject in there. So one of the first things I noticed is the shape of the giant hill. Need I say more? This is a Birmingham University study of all the land over 150 metres. And this side gets really interesting when I put it upside down by mistake sometimes. But anyway, the giant is near the tip of the phallic-shaped hill. Very intentional, I would say. And right at the edge of the hill, right next to it, I've blown the giant, is the spring. And it's almost like the ejaculation of the hill. Everything is being chosen with great care. And right opposite the phallic-shaped hill is Weem Hill, a very pregnant-shaped hill, and Weem Common Hill, in Old English it means uterus or womb. It just happens to be opposite the phallic-shaped hill, so it is wow, it is indeed. So the Druids knew exactly what they were doing. They were looking at mythologised landscapes very before they positioned the giant there. And I love the way the giant had just been pushed back 600 years to almost where I said it was a few years ago. So sometimes we have to wait for archaeologists to catch up, but get there in the end. Yeah, that's one of the first examples of landscape settings. Landscape is everything, perhaps. Another example from the Dartmoor books, the last example I'll show, it soon became apparent that all the stone circles, a lot of the stone circles and the stone rows were lined up with the tors in mind. They're interested in the tors, because this is where the gods reside. This is where the ancestors reside. These are the sacred tors, just like we have holy mountains and holy hills all over the world today. So again, landscape is everything. And another thing I noticed, that every stone circle on Dartmoor is positioned where you can see the most amount of tors from. And sometimes you walk away from the stone circle and the number of tors you can see plummets. So landscape is very people are connecting themselves with the landscape. Landscape is everything, as Professor Chris Tilley said. So eventually landscapes themselves became our primary focus, something we weren't even thinking about a few years ago. We were all stone circles, stone rows, fantastic. But eventually landscapes became our primary focus, as it was, I believe, back in prehistory. Landscape features as foci for ancient monuments is actually a chapter in the Albion Dreamtime book. Just 4 examples here. Petra Ifran, we're going here next weekend with the Wiltshire Dowsers. Nobody can deny it really is a focal point. This mountain, Carningley, is the focal point for the monument. There's 5 instances of this at Castlereagh. Can you see how the edge of the stone circle mirrors the distance skyline? They're positioning themselves, referencing the landscape. Same at Swinside. And nobody can deny that the 3 hurlers all line up to the cheese ring at the top, Stowe's Pound, where the Michael and Mary current meets, plus some other energy lines coming up from Tintagel. So landscape is everything.
So we're basically talking about our Albion Dreamtime book here. And our Albion Dreamtime quest had the aim to see if any of Albion's original, Albion I mean England and Scotland.
And Wales.
Sorry, Albion. To see if any of Albion's original sacred places, all of which were natural, such as waterfalls, notable rock features, forests and caves, still survived in pristine condition. And to return to simplicity, back to basics. All our focus this time is not so much on stone circles and ley lines. Back to nature. And to develop an environmental spirituality, much needed at this time. Albion Dreamtime also had to be a joint venture, a balance of our yin and yang, as it is with our goddess, the earth.
And in the spirit of this, Sue will buy her own way in a pub. She really will. She insists on it. And who am I to deny her that? So. No.
So all things begin and end in Albion's ancient druid rocky shore. Wise words from the wonderful William Blake. And our book tells the story of our quest to the original ancient Dreamtime places of this sacred isle.
So we sought out the spirit of Albion's hunter-gatherer pioneers, the spirituality of the Neanderthals and the Mesolithic people who lived a spiritual symbiotic relationship with the land. People only took what they needed. Isn't that a lesson from the Mesolithic right to now? Genetic memories of them sleep inside us all. We all know that we've got a little bit of Neanderthal in us. Some people more than others when I walk around the streets, but yeah. But we also have a lot of Mesolithic hunter-gatherer in us as well. So that gene is inside us, perhaps being very patient for us to get it together again. But from the Neolithic, people took what was necessary to farm. Big difference. The fall had begun. So there's plenty of evidence for spirituality and shamanism prior to Neolithic around Europe, including Albion. So we quested to see if any sacred places of the Ice Age and Mesolithic hunter-gatherers still survived. And could we still experience them today? So why have we been called now? We think there's been 4,000 years of what we call a falling from grace. Farming arrived in the Neolithic. Deforestation. The land is now somebody's property. Who said that? Who said that should be the case? It's not the case in hunter-gatherers. Nature is now something to be controlled, and of course over hundreds of years it led to industrialization, the culmination of man on this planet, 5G, and of course COVID and Ukraine. Ukraine is all to do with the fall. So people have information overload today, but don't you feel that there's something wrong, there's something broken? Wherever you look, things are breaking down. Societies, I don't know, emptying the bins, no matter potholes, no matter what you think of, from a global scale to a local scale, things aren't going well, are they? And I hope I'm wrong, but I think this is going to continue. So perhaps we are yearning as a species to get back to a more original way of thinking, not a weird hippie Glastonbury way of thinking, but the way we all once thought as a species.
Because as a species, civilization has clipped the wings of our spirit. So we seek to return to previous ways of perception. We have turned to the land for solace, truth and wisdom. Climate change is now. We are in it. The whole of the world's weather system is completely up the creek. And the COP conference in Glasgow failed. It didn't really do much at all to change things. And all of our spiritual aspirations will amount to absolutely nothing if our ailing Great Mother can no longer support us. Once upon a time, long, long ago, there was an enchanted land called Albion. That's how our book starts. because we needed it to sound like a fairy tale, because we live in a fairy tale land. Albion is a storied land, a land of giants, dragons, the Fae, Arthur, Merlin, Taliesin and Gwyn ap Neath. The myths draped across Albion are usually associated with specific natural places where the land communicates with us, where we are close to spirit. Science,
As in Rory.
as in Rory's stuff, is confirming these mythologies. You put that in the break, didn't you?
I did.
I didn't see that. You didn't tell me.
I didn't tell you, I knew you were up to it, my darling. Yeah, rather than trash the ancient myths and legends and all this indigenous stuff, science is confirming what we've been told for thousands of years. You know, legends about serpents and dragons, they are still going across the land.
They are.
Rory's tracking them quite excellently across the planet.
Yes. And the Druids mainly used those natural places, as indigenous people still do today.
Do I need to tell you next time I put something in?
Yeah.
So, myths are remnants of Dreamtime. I'll go on what Dreamtime is very shortly. Legends often ring with truth. It's like reading through the holy books and things. Sometimes you have to read between the lines. And we often follow clues to us given by place names and legend, such as Lud's Church on the right there. So, Dreamtime mythologized landscapes. To all indigenous cultures and the ancient cultures, no matter which one you want to look at, the earth was created by gods or creator beings. I can't actually think of an exception to that, but that is actually what they all believe. So are they all wrong? And myths are inscribed on the land. It is the landscape that gifts the stories. Just think about that. The Aborigines believe the landscape holds the stories, and when people move into that landscape, they are gifted the stories by the landscape. How beautiful is that? A lot of Irish mythology, I'm sure, as well, and Welsh was gifted that way. What a beautiful concept that is. We immediately pick up on what's already there, what needs to be gifted to us. So you could say geography is imprinted with memory. There is memory in the landscape. And most importantly, the Dreamtime is still now. Somebody mentioned it earlier on, you know, there's no past, there's no future, everything is here right now.
Happening now.
And that's what the Aborigines, any Aborigine will tell you. Here's one example that big green man there, you can see in one of our sites in Scotland. I mean, I could kid you that this lovely big profile, is actually in some Aboriginal site in the middle of the desert near Ayers Rock, but it isn't. It's in Dartmoor. So, you know, the Dreamtime is all around if you have new eyes to see. So how are Dreamtime stories birthed in cultures around the world? And here, thousands of years ago, perhaps it's through simulacra. You can see the face there, the crooked nose face at Hound Tor. We've all seen faces in trees and rocks, and so did our ancients, that's the point. Sensing the pulse of earth energies, including dowsing by the ancients, the serpents Rory was speaking about. And of course through shamanic journeying, through chant drumming, psychoactive plants. We don't have those on our tours at the moment, do we? No, sorry. But yeah, these are all ways where you can get your brain out of the way. There is plenty of scope, and there is a time for being a nerd. I have nerdy moments, and sometimes you need that to do the maps, to trace your lines across Google Earth. But when we actually arrive at a site, you know, we try and we try to get all that out the way, to be honest.
Just let the place speak to us. Ancient people would have had contact with elementals on a daily basis. They'd have talked to the fairies, as many people still can today. And these elementals bring spirit into physical. And what would they have made of natural phenomena? Storms, rainbows and fog, for instance. Wisdom from the land is absorbed by osmosis. Subconsciously, it just seeps into our system, and we get ideas from it, inspiration.
So Dartmoor was where my heart was fully open the first time to the wisdom and the limitless love of the land. Some of you might have had that feel of love from the land, which we can all, and it just like takes your breath away. It's just unbelievable. After several initiations, I kind of thought that I kind of realised that the land had actually let me in, and that is something anybody can achieve. And I was shown various things like this. This is the speaking crone. You can see on Dartmoor and Great Staple Tor, complete with teeth. And who knows, when the shaman thousands of years ago was under the influence of whatever, perhaps it did appear to speak. There's lots of folklore across the world of speaking stones and talking rocks. And look at this. This is for all the world at Watton Tor, one of our other Albion Dreamtime localities, as if two rock giants are like facing up to each other, you know, like those rock giants in Lord of the Rings, Hobbit. Lord of the Rings? Lord of the Rings, yeah. Incredible. So this is what helps to birth myths, or at least perpetuate them later on down the line. So at Carn Brae, there's, well, anybody from Cornwall here, you'll know there's the famous story of a giant throwing rocks and having an argument with another giant at St Agnes. And we thought, right, giants, let's go up to the hill and see if we can find the giant that's been perpetuating the myth. And there he is. And you get all these weird rocks at Stowe's Pound around the cheese ring. I mean, how did these inspire our ancient ancestors? You know, what myths did they read into these wondrous structures? Because we can explain all these by geomorphological processes now, but they wouldn't have had that knowledge. They're seeing these as evidence of spirit. A scientist once asked a Native American, well, isn't it just coincidence, all these rocks that we happen to see as faces? And he paused for a moment. He said, well, what would be the point of Great Spirit sending us images we would not recognise? And I thought that was a wonderful reply. The scientist walked off. So the Dreamtime is here in Albion right now. Hound Tor, there's a lot of folklore of the spectral hunt and wild hounds at Hound Tor. So we went up there. And, you know, this is all for the world like a big bloodhound, isn't it? And there's several other rocks that look like faces, all within sight of Hay Tor, the twin horns or the breasts of the Earth Mother. Lots of stone circles on Dartmoor you can see Hay Tor from. Very special place in the Dartmoor. And it's, what a sacred site is not always immediately obvious. You know, is this a sacred site? You can all see the simulacra there, can you? Yeah, I mean, this is great. This is without alcohol. You know, you can see all these wonderful faces. And this area's been cleared up on Bear Down Tor, middle of nowhere. We have taken our Dartmoor groups here. You've got a simulacra. There's an altar stone there with a rock basin in the top. And look at this stone here. It's been propped up by a spherical ball underneath. You know, archaeologically, this isn't a sacred site, but it is. Oh yes, by any definition. Chris Tilley again said, what space is depends on who is experiencing it. You could take 10 people to see the same film. They all have a different opinion of it. But who's correct? Well, of course, they all are. And it's the same with visiting sacred sites. You know, it's like dowsing, isn't it? You know, you take beginner dowsers into a field. They all disappear into 20 different directions. And, you know, they find different things. And I say, well, look, you're all correct. You've all got different sensibilities, different star signs. You all feel this, that and the other this evening. Why do you think you would all have the same results? In fact, I'd be very worried if you took 20 people out and they did all dowse the same result, have the same result, because we're not robots. Not yet.
So, dragons. How many people have seen dragons? We dowse dragons all the time. And here is just a few. The one at the top there is the drinking dragon just off the coast of the Isle of Man. Bottom right is Durdle Door down in Dorset. And the one on the left here, that's another dragon we saw on Dartmoor. Dragons are all around us. And the more you see them, the more you become aware of them, the more will appear.
This is locally known as the drinking dragon by locals in Dorset. You can see it now. And Gary Bilcliffe and myself had to climb right up onto the spine, very hairy. And but one of the things I was told while I'm dangling up there is that the time of dragons is returning. Yeah! It's on its way.
Dragons in clouds, dragons in bonfires. We see them all the time. And these two cloud dragons appeared after we'd been doing some of our questing for Albion Dreamtime. And you just see them at sunset. There they are, as we're walking back to the car. You can't help but see them. Magical, special times.
So caves, there are 19 of them in our Albion Dreamtime book. Now Sue has a challenge, finds caves challenging. So I took her in 19 of them. And yeah, they're very special places.
They're places of myths, of dwarves and dragons. You're going into the womb of the Earth Mother. They're liminal places, places of fear, especially for me, of the unknown. But they're also resonant places. And this is where we talk about sacred sound. Ice Age cave art is often found at acoustic hotspots. And later these properties were replicated in chambered tombs. So they did their cave art in tombs. We all know about the spirals in the Newgrange in Ireland. So I'll talk a bit more about sound later on. It's very, very important.
But when you go into a cave, the sounds are incredible, and you're brought into the here and now. It's about total immersion in place. And I'm hoping the video works, because this is one we took on our last visit to Yordis Cave.
Fingers crossed.
It's one of the Albion Dreamtime sites. It's safe to go in. The water, we've never known rise above 2 feet.
You need welly boots.
But you need welly boots or bare feet, better still. So you go into the cave. Where we're photographing it is about 50 to 75 metres from the entrance. Everything's pitch black till we put the torches on. But of course, what you can't compete with is the water.
Is that salt water?
No, it's fresh water. Fresh water.
Yeah, we're in Yorkshire, I think.
Okay.
Fantastic.
So we soon realised the importance of sacred sound. Sometimes chanting was necessary for us to actually be allowed to enter a place when we'd originally been denied it. But we'll talk more of that later. But music in itself is really important. We talk about the Aborigines singing the song lines. Well, we've got song lines over here as well. And sound, I've spoken to a few people over the course of the past couple of years as we've been doing this talk. And a lot of people are getting switched on to sound and how important it is to use at these sacred sites. So we'll talk more about that later. I'll talk more about that later.
You will.
I will.
She will.
Watery places. As a female, I've been drawn to a lot of watery places. I'm talking to a lot of women also, feeling the same thing. It's a very feminine thing. And there is a special enchantment to water. Guy Hudson talked earlier about the negative ions and how the healing properties have. And watery places are often mythic locations. We know the story of Excalibur and the Lady in the Lake. Water creatures, water spirits, the Grail Knights. It's all that watery myths, really special. And water holds memory. We talk about homeopathy and how it holds the memory of the particular medicine. And I'm sure many of you know the work of Masaru Emoto, where he actually put the energy into certain water and then measured it using the crystals. Hugely important. And so we had to actually feature a lot of places in Albion Dreamtime because of this watery importance. They're places that are close to spirit. At Conway Falls in North Wales, there was this amazing water crashing over this waterfall. And then it glides slowly into the fairy glen. We had to go and visit the fairy glen. And it's peaceful, magical place with not just fairies, but it has association with Merlin. And the froth of all the water tumbling over the falls earlier on was forming all of these strange shapes as the water was gliding slowly through the glen. And it was changing shape and giving me messages. So perhaps it was doing the same thing for Merlin. It was a place of like scrying, or somehow he was getting messages there. Really important.
Wilderness places. We still have wilderness places in Albion.
Wales, Scotland.
Wales, Scotland. I was almost going to say the Houses of Parliament, but I won't even go there. Yeah, Wales, large areas of Scotland, of course. Dartmoor is the last wilderness area, I believe, in southern England. And they're unnerving in their spaciousness. Should I go out there, especially on my own? They're edgy, challenging. You're out of your comfort zone. We go out in all weathers, day and night, to challenge ourselves. But as you do that, you actually feel the awakening of that hunter-gatherer, ancient hunter-gatherer that sleeps in our DNA. And fear can be transformed into exhilaration, because we have found generally when you go out of your comfort zone, that's where the magic happens. You know, when you think about it, why should the land give us anything? We are representatives of the human race when we arrive up at a place. So it's all about, I believe, intent and what you're there for. And the place soon scans you.
Trees. Who doesn't love trees? Trees are so important. We included at least 4 ancient forests of yew and oak in the book, because there is this wonderful enchantment of trees. And mythologies are rich in tree stories. Every single culture in the world has trees in its belief system. We have the tree of life, the world tree, the Yggdrasil, the tree of knowledge. They're all in there. Trees are really important. And they're wisdom keepers. They hold the memory of the land, particularly the ancient trees that we need to protect. It's no good chopping down ancient forests and planting lots of little saplings, because it's the ancient trees that pass on the wisdom to the young trees. And they are communicators. They communicate with us, but they communicate with each other through their pheromone system, their chemicals they put through the air, and through the mycelium, through the root system. So they're connected all around the world. It's almost as if they are one organism. All these trees are connected to each other. And they will connect with us if we connect with them. Ask their permission first, of course. That. So this wonderful great big tree you see here, the 2 pictures of, the cathedral oak in the Savernake forest in Wiltshire near Marlborough. Beautiful tree, well over 1,000 years old, and it speaks to us quite regularly. We like to go and visit this one.
And you find simulacra in trees just as you do in stones. And I'm sure you've all seen faces in trees. You look the sort of crowd that would do that. Wonderful. I'd take that as a compliment. This is one in our book. This was in the yew forest of Kingly Vale. And this in Sussex, no Photoshop. You can end your Photoshop subscription if you start looking for this, because you don't need it. This dragon just stopped us in our tracks. Even that red eye and that glint, I can assure you, is actually there. And this is another one in a hollowed out yew tree in Alton Priors near Abbey, where we go to regularly. But the point is, things like that have always been. So our ancients would have also seen those in the trees. So what would they have made of that? Would they have seen that of evidence that spirit is present? So there's 28 pages of where dowsing is featured in our Albion Dreamtime, and earth energies are mentioned on over 40 pages. It was a very important part of this project. And this also included intuitive dowsing. I think using our intuition is dowsing, isn't it? A lot of nods, I think so. There's a time for rods. We always take our rods with us. There's a time for pendulums. We go out with our pendulums. But sometimes there's a time just for sitting there and let the place speak to you. Or following your intuition. I'm sure you've all done it. You've got to a stone circle. There's one stone calling you, isn't there? Come and say hello to me. You've all had that experience. Follow it. Follow it. Gary Bilcliffe, bless him, and Caroline both helped us to dowse some sites down in Dorset Way. And this is another Albion Dreamtime site because it is a natural hill, although it might have been modified slightly. It is a natural hill, and of course in that valley the Belinus line energies cross the St Michael line energies, and we went to dowse. But the most important thing, I think, is honouring the site and giving something back. We'll talk about that later on. So there is quite a bit of dowsing in Albion Dreamtime. Just two more places quickly. This huge big rock, the Great Stone of Four Stones, looks like a big walrus, doesn't it? And the Ellen current goes through that, which we were dowsing, doesn't it? You had a name for this, didn't you?
Well, because we were dowsing the Ellen line, I thought it looked like a giant elephant.
Elephant.
Like an elephant.
Grown.
Yes.
And this, of course, is where the Belinus line energies, Ellen and Bell, famously go through Alderley Edge through the Wizard's Well. So some of these sites, which might be quite well known to you, did make it into the AD book because they're so magical. So we were compelled to journey to Albion's original sacred places, but would they speak to us? We felt a sense of urgency also that time was running out. And the more we left our analytical side behind, and there's a time for that, the more we were gifted, you know, and the more we simply honoured a place. In other words, the more we gave, the more we were given. Isn't that a wonderful thing? Mm. And we were gifted poetry, chants, and deeper wisdom of the land, and often overwhelming feelings of love. Mm. What's not to like? So we're going to go, for the second half, we're going to go up and down the country. When we did the book, we divided the Britain into 7 areas, and that's typical of one of our maps. I've used this one because it's not far from where we are, really. So it's all natural features and incredible rock outcrops, and they're all still there. They're all still pristine. And everything that we included, we just knew or were told that it was a Mesolithic hunter-gatherer site and it was sacred to them. It wasn't just where they stopped to have drink or camp. It was actually a sacred site to them. So that's typical what's in right through the book, because we want people to follow where we've been, and also make your own list. This is just our list. Make your own.
Find your own sacred sites as well. So, who's been to Merlin's Cave in Tintagel? Oh, just a few.
Oh, just a few.
Highly recommend it. It's a space. It's a place of lots of myths. Arthur's castle is just above, and this has Merlin's. Was his place for, I don't know, where he hang out. Really special place, and it's full of energy.
We must give him a tip.
I'll give you a tip. Go at low tide because it's down on the beach. And it's a huge cave that goes actually right the way through the cliff to the other side. So it's like a tunnel, if anything. And there's a lot of wind that comes through, and it's lots of energy coming through. We're dowsing it and just feeling this wind coming through and the tide coming through. And we went there to drum as well as to dowse. And while we were there, Pete was gifted this special drum beat. So he was told by Spirit that that's the dragon's heartbeat. So if you hear that, perhaps there's a dragon nearby.
Or me.
Or him drumming.
So on this particular occasion, we came out of the cave. We've been there several times before, and right at the back of the cliff, we saw that. Can you all see it? Yeah. Absolutely amazing. And I'm not aware, and I've trawled the internet, I haven't seen another picture of that. And yet it's right out, just as you come out of the cliff, on the right, where the steps down to the beach have recently collapsed and been repaired again. They have been repaired now. So yeah, and this is probably actual size. There's the bottom of the beach. There's the head, the eye. It's almost got a slipstream around him. You know the effect that aircraft make? Yeah. It's incredible, and it's sticking out of the rock in relief. It's a quartz nodule. Absolutely wonderful. And we've just been given the dragon's heartbeat, and we walk out, and I've never seen that before at all, a quartz dragon. And so it just goes to show, if you get yourself in that mindset, magic reveals itself, because it wants to. I believe it wants to.
It's not always visible,
No.
because if a storm rolls in, it may get covered up by a lot of rocks or by the gravel. So it revealed itself to us that day. But have a look for it next time you're there.
So coming up, again, we haven't really got, I mean, Cornwall is absolutely stuffed full of sites in our book, but we've come up to Devon, because this is a great example, the Thurstone Arch in Devon. And it's this huge, massive stack, which seems almost artificial. It's almost like an eroded lighthouse, but it's totally natural. And when you look at it edgeways, you can see, you can actually walk through it at low tide. It's about 200 metres from the shore, so you can only go out there at very low tide. And it really seems like the balance of yin and yang. It's phallic from that direction. It's got the yoni of the Earth Mother when you look at it the other direction. And we got there, because the nerd in me, so you do need to be a nerd sometimes, it works out that it was complete low tide at noon. And we got there at 1 minute to noon. And you could just feel the whole, I mean, we were 200 yards from the shore, and it's like we were in a lake, wasn't it? But then,
it was so still.
But then you felt the difference.
It takes quite a while to get out there. So we'd been picking our way amongst all the rock pools and the seaweed, and then just standing there connecting with the place and listening to it and hearing what it has to say to us. And the tide was actually at complete low tide. Still, completely still. And then suddenly everything started to move again, and you could see all the seaweed starting to move. It was quite magical. But we obviously thought, better get back to the shore, tide's coming in. So it took about 20 minutes to get back to shore, picking our way amongst all these rock pools and all the seaweed again. And finally got back to the beach, having been looking down all that time, turned back. That's what we saw.
A mist
The sea mist had come in,
and then we could only see the top of it.
completely obscuring the whole of the arch. And we only saw this as we got back up the cliff, back to where our car was parked, and you could just see the top of the arch above the sea mist. It was astounding, absolutely astounding, magical day.
And in Celtic traditions, this sort of mist is known as the dragon's breath. The dragon is breathing out, and you can see where all those folk tales come from. Amazing.
And this magic can happen to anyone. It's not just us.
So moving up, there's loads of sites on Dartmoor that are in the book. And Wistman's Wood, some of you may have been there, a magical oak wood on Dartmoor. They're stunted oak trees because they have to survive on the moor. They're jostling for position with the granite clitter. Folklore of the wild hunt, we take our groups here sometimes on Dartmoor, and we go there for ceremony ourselves. In this very ancient wood, there are overhangs that you can get underneath and drum. But when I wanted to show Sue this, when I took her there for the first time, I said, I've got to take you here. Because right in the middle of the wood, there's this triangle stone that's been uprighted, I believe. And the energies are pouring off it. And I've had some very powerful meditations there in the past. And when this picture was taken, the serpent had rolled up in one of the roots of the tree. Amazing. But it actually wasn't this triangular stone that took your attention, was it? I mean, talk about ents. It was actually this, wasn't it, Sue?
When Pete and I go to these places, we don't spend all our time together. We go off and separate for a little while and meditate and connect with the place. And I'd connected with this rather strange-looking tree. And as I was sitting there looking to it and talking to it, I could see quite clearly on its trunk a face, eyes, nose, but no mouth. And I thought, why hasn't it got a mouth? And then it came to me straight away, because trees can't speak up for themselves. We have to speak up for them. We have to protect them. Go out and do your thing to sign petitions and stand by trees and stop them getting chopped down. They're important.
And I've had some serious meditations, I don't like to use the word serious actually, joyful meditations in front of this rock quite a few times. But on this occasion, they said, hey Pete, this stone, which is known as the portal stone, this portal is not an entrance to another world, but rather a tool to open your heart in this world. And then it came to me, this is the whole point. You know, there were loads of people, you know, every night up the top of Glastonbury Tor waiting for the mothership to land. You know, it's not going to happen. You are meant to be on the planet right now. If you weren't meant to be here, you couldn't be here. So, you know, this is, was it the book once, The Only Planet of Choice? And it sure is. It sure is. So it's not always about being given something that'll start a religion. Please no. We've got enough of those, I would say. But it's about how to empower yourself personally, I would say.
When Pete and I first discussed doing this book, my top of the list was Lidford Gorge. How many people have been to Lidford Gorge in Dartmoor? Yes, quite a few.
Beautiful.
If you haven't, go. The St Michael line goes through there. It's a steep-sided valley with massive tall trees reaching for the sky. A river running through the bottom of the valley. This incredible waterfall at one end, the White Lady Falls. And at the other end of the valley is the Devil's Cauldron, another waterfall. So there are two rivers going in to join this one. And it is a magical place, full of elementals, full of nature spirits, fairies everywhere. It's just wonderful. And it's the place that I go to on a pilgrimage. It's somewhere that I really recharge. It's a very special place.
Should we share the secret with them? They look like a nice bunch of people, don't we?
Could
Anybody
do.
from the National Trust here?
No.
Because there's a circuitous route which takes hours to get around, the National Trust can't lock the one gate up by the White Lady because they're waiting for people to come out. So it's open overnight. So there's no sign telling you not to come in there, and whenever we take our groups in, we put money in the donation box. So, but you go down through the woods of a night into dusk, into dark, and then by the time it gets dark, you've just got this column of water in front of you, and all the black woods around you. We take our groups there every few years on our Dartmoor weekends, and the one thing that I get from that is that you know you're not alone. You know you're being watched by elementals. It's amazing. And talking about nighttime visits, we went together when we were compiling the book.
Yes.
Sorry, we've got light pollution on the pictures, but yeah.
We went to honour the place, and as I waded in, or paddled in I should say, it's not very deep, this particular point, I screamed. And Pete said, oh, is it cold? And I said, well, yes, it is cold, but it was more than that. It was as if I could feel the pain of the water, of how badly we treat our water. We take it for granted. And water is so important. It's the only water this planet will ever have. So we need to treat it with respect. And I could feel that pain from the water.
I love the thing you say sometimes. Tell them about the dinosaurs.
Oh yes, it's the only water that the world has ever had. And it's the same water the dinosaurs drank. Doesn't that just blow your mind?
And pooped in.
And pooped in as
Yeah.
well. Cheers.
Cheers, enjoy. Yeah. So yeah, go to places during the day and the night. We've had to shoot up into Somerset, missing a load of sites in between. If any of you live in Somerset or in the Mendips area, you might know Avalon's Hole. It's near Cheddar in Borrington Combe. Most of you won't know it. It's a Mesolithic cemetery. Not many Mesolithic sites in Britain are actually called a cemetery. Very few. This is one. They've gone down in this massive deep hole. It's open all the time, easy access. You go down on your bum usually, about 40 to 45 degrees slope until you're down the bottom, and the light is just at the entrance is just a little cuticle of light really, and the acoustics in there, you know, were amazing, because we're thinking, well, why was this cave chosen and not all the others which weren't in the area? And the acoustics were amazing. But what we do when we go to places like this, we've got some really bright torches, and we'll shine them up on the ceiling to see what we can see. Well, when we shone the torch up just above my head where the cemetery was, we found that.
Ooh,
Oh, I love that.
yeah.
This is about actual size. And it's been dry, this cave. You get some drips occasionally come down, but basically it's a dry cave. And you know, it's been like that for a long time. So actually, you know, this may have been visible back in prehistory in a very similar form. We call her the cave spirit, and she's actually floating above you. And there's all these other weird marks which we put in the book. And of course, at one time, there'd have been flickering torches down there, and all these faces would have become animated. So what an effect that would have been. And we can go in there today and get the same, see the same effect. So another cave that we're going to where are we going? Sometime this summer. Senior moment. We go in here, and then we're doing Brecon Beacons the day after. King Arthur's Cave in the Forest of Dean. A fantastic 5 minutes walk through the woods from the cave, from the car park. Beautiful place. Arthurian folklore, Merlin, Ice Age remains have been found in there. Lots of mammoth bones, wolf bones. A sacred place. There's one main cave as you go in, and there's a couple of side chambers. One is almost pitch black, which we take the group into, and it's an amazing place. And this is when we first got this was early on when you actually. I'll just set Sue's story up. You know, sometimes when you go to a place, there's the may I, can I, should I, that sort of thing. And, you know, I was told a good, clear, departed friend of mine, Bob Sefton, Dorset Dowsers, what a gentleman dowser he was. And he told me a story once how he went to Knowlton, took him an hour and a half to get there, and then he was said, can I enter? And he'd said no, and he got in the car and walked up and drove off. And that might sound a respectful thing to do, but we've respectfully suggest something that you might want to do if you do get that no.
All of these places, when we go to them, we always ask permission from the spirit of place. Always. On this particular occasion at King Arthur's Cave, we'd driven nearly 2 hours to get there. And as I approached, I had a bad feeling. I paused, I asked permission, and it said no. It was the first time it had ever happened. And I was a bit taken aback. Oh, okay, now what? So I tuned in again, and I said, is there anything that we can do that would make it okay for us to enter the cave today? And the answer came back, sing to me. I've talked to a lot of people lately, and a lot of places are saying this. We need to sing to a lot of these places. Music is really important. I didn't know what to sing. I started humming a bit, and it gave me a tune to sing. And I found that a lot of different places, they give me a completely different tune, and they may give you another tune again. So what was it doing? Was it tuning us in? Was it the vibration of the place that was healing the place? I don't know. Was it just I don't know. The music of the place, is it really important? And it's become more and more important in the last couple of years. Lynn?
I just want to share that's come to me as well.
Haven't just perhaps got to meditate at these places. We need to sing. And it's the vibration. Perhaps we need to raise the vibration of everything.
Can I also add to that I think not only do we need to sing, but I think we also need to dance.
Dancing? Yes, we've been given that one as well.
Come on our weekends, you'll dance.
Yes. Yes. Yeah.
I think the planet, that Mother Earth wants us to sing, to dance, you know, to be happy, to open your heart. You know, there's plenty of practices you can do, you know, if you want to be more somber and serious. But I think the Earth wants us to dance. I do, because wherever we look, we see animals and creatures singing and dancing. And but yeah, each place you revealed, as Sue said, a unique song.
Story.
And sometimes that was its story. And sometimes we'd leave the place and we get back to the car and we think, what have we been chanting for half an hour? And we couldn't remember what it was. And perhaps it's only meant to be sung at that place. So we had to respect that.
So
And did you then ask if you could enter, and it
yes.
said yes?
Yes.
Oh, yes.
Yes, definitely.
Or else we
yes.
wouldn't have gone in.
We wouldn't have gone in otherwise.
I think perhaps it's also testing us and seeing how sincere we are, perhaps.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Can I just add as well that, you know, when we've gone to sacred sites like this, we've given our love, our thanks and respect to the spirit of the land of the community. And what's really weird is that when we just get out of our way and allow a sound to come through us, there's a magical point where our voices stop singing and where the rocks or the land start singing through us.
Yeah.
And a lot of the time they're seeking expression and seeking a voice.
Through us.
Through us.
Oh, how beautiful. Yeah.
Yeah.
I agree.
Wonderful.
I agree.
Wonderful.
Fantastic.
So yes, we're raising the vibration, sing, dance, do whatever we need to do.
And the whole universe is still humming, isn't it? From the Big Bang, the residue of the Big Bang. The original orgasm of the goddess is how I see it. So yeah, in the beginning was the word. There you go.
And it was a sung word,
And it was a song.
not a spoken word.
It wasn't a word, it was lyrics. Yeah. Okay, we'll move on. So thanks for that. So there's an inner chamber. There's an inner chamber that you go in, and it's very black. And all over the wall are these residues. They're not handmade, they're man-made, but they're where the calcium and the iron impurities are weathering out from the wall. You can see faces in there and everything. And of course the point was those things were there also weathering out thousands of years ago. So I'm not a channeler. I would never pretend to be a channeler. I think things are gifted us. And we were in there one day. I'll share this experience. In King Arthur's cave. Sue had gone off into this chamber and I was still in the outer chamber. So we growled some bear growls and howled like wolves, as you do. Perhaps their souls still linger there, their skeletons were found there. And then we have our quiet time. Sue goes off into the dark chamber to gently drum and chant, whilst I sit in the main chamber and tune in, almost out of frustration. Arthur, are you here? Are you here, I ask? And the reply was immediate. I, Arthur, am here, and will be as long as you remember me, for I am the spirit of the land. I am the spirit of the land, the spirit of Albion. My heart opens as Sue continues to chant and drum in the other chamber. So what should I do, I ask? Do as you and others are doing, for as long as people re-chant my name out on my sacred land, then one day the spirit of Albion will surely rise again. I reply, thank you. And I kid you not, at that very second, Sue stops drumming in the other chamber. You couldn't make it up. And the whole cave fell silent. So she had been the voice and the drum, and I had that had awoken spirit perhaps, and I had merely been the scribe. And at that second, a big rush of wind came in, bringing all the autumnal leaves in. It was like whoosh, yes, and everybody sitting here can and should have those experiences. There's no reason why any of you here can't have those experiences, and I dare say some of you already have. So we've got to move on quickly. Come with us. Later on this year, we're going to have a day on the Brecon Beacons. We're going to take you into waterfalls you can stand behind, and caves with a river flowing through them. And this is a particular favourite we're going to go to later on in the year. Go on, you.
Squid era.
There's no Welsh in it.
Squid era.
That's
Thank
easy
you.
for you to say. It's easy for you to say.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Beautiful place. And these two bottom pictures are actually of the same place, but in different weather conditions. So one on the left was in summer when the waterfall wasn't quite so heavy. Quite easy to get around, just got a few fresh, refreshing splashes. But the one on the right, we'd gone, I think, in February, after it had been raining.
It rains in Wales.
It rains a lot in Wales. The waterfall was twice as heavy. We got absolutely drenched. But it was exciting, it was exhilarating. And you just knew that thousands of years ago, the initiate was there with the shaman, going through the process.
It means the shaking of the snow.
The snow.
So the snow that's coming down is just being shaken by, obviously, the spirit of
The gods, yeah.
Fantastic.
releasing the snow.
Do you want to see a video?
Lovely, thank you.
We've got a little video of, hopefully it'll work. It's not fenced off, there isn't any danger of death sign. You can just walk there anytime, and it's on the official Waterfalls Trail. And please come with us later on in the year, please do. So Devil's Gorge, we're going to go, there's a lot more places in Wales. Apologies to Wales, we've got to shoot up the other end now. Near Wrexham in North Wales, there's a place called the Devil's Gorge. And this is a ginormous cave. We haven't even got to the bottom of it yet. But as you approach, it kind of sucks you in. It's like the doorway to Anwin for sure. And you get closer, and then you see it's a 45-degree slope. Does that stop us? No. And go in, and here's some pictures. There's me already down the bottom. There's Sue tentatively coming down. She'd already said, are there any freshly fallen rocks there, Pete? And I'd already said no. And the acoustics down the bottom are, I think, some of the most amazing we've ever seen.
It's like being in a cathedral.
Yeah,
It's
yeah.
amazing.
And the longest echo we had was 4 seconds. Now that doesn't sound very long. Can you imagine an echo lasting 4 seconds? It's quite a long while. And we haven't even got down to the bottom of the caves yet. We're going to go back there later on in the year. Again, it's not fenced in. It's open all the time. It's part of the Loggerheads Country Park. But all the directions are in the book. But Sue was taking her time coming down, fine. She was conquering her fears. And it reminded me of the second Star Wars film. Us guys, yeah, the second Star Wars film. Do you remember when Luke's got to go into the cave, and Yoda says to him, Luke says to Yoda, what am I going to find in there? What have I got to find? I'm really frightened. And Yoda says, all you'll find is what you take in with you. What you take in with you is what you'll find in there. So this thing called fear, it's good to keep us safe sometimes. It's a good idea to look what's coming before you cross the road. But that's your brain's job description, really. It wants to keep the body safe. And sometimes you have to go beyond that and go beyond your fears. And it's where the magic lies. And Luke proved it. So another place, I'm sure a lot of you have been to Dovedale with the pretty little stepping stones. If you walk about 10 minutes and follow the river upstream and you go off the path, you come to this. You can see the scale of me there. Reynard's Arch. I mean, if this isn't a liminal place, what isn't? Absolutely incredible. You scramble up a 45-degree slope. They found Neolithic and Roman remains there under the arch. And in the next place I'm going to show you, it really is like walking into the Dreamtime. Absolutely amazing. And when you get to the top of the slope, right up here, you get this. Look at this cave. Yawning with its nostrils, eyes, and it's like those dementors in Harry Potter. They're about to suck your brain out, And this cave is immense. It's so high. You can see that there's me standing in it. You can see the tall of it. Incredible. The ravens use it. So wow, And we found this elongated head. It's a natural rock inside this cave. And so if we've spotted this, you can bet your life the ancients did thousands of years ago. So what did they make of that? So again, that's in Dovedale. Open all the time, that cave. You've just got to follow our directions and you'll find it. Thor's Cave. Well, what can I say about this? Anybody been here in the Peak District? Oh, at Wetton? Oh, amazing. Directions are there from this little village. And it's one of the largest open caves. No management here, you can just waltz into it. It's like walking into the carcass of a dragon, isn't it? These ribs here. And it goes in, and there's all these side chambers. We're going back soon to explore all the side chambers. And, you know, once a year the sun actually does come in through another entrance. But Ice Age and human remains were found here over a long time, so of course we had to go here. And the inner nerd in me had worked out. We went just after the solstice, and there's an entrance, a side entrance that points towards the northwest, and I'm thinking solstice sunset. The solstice sun is going to come in there, and I worked out later that it's going to come through that entrance for 2 weeks every year before it sets. So I thought, right, where do we have to stand? And we found this side chamber here where I reckon the sun would come in just before it set. And we waited there. It was almost like Indiana Jones, you know, where he's holding the thing up in the map room on Raiders of the Lost Ark. And lo and behold, it did come in. And but while we were waiting,
it had been a long, really dry summer. Even though it was only solstice, we'd had a long, dry spell, and a lot of the moors were actually on fire. So we desperately needed some rain, and who better to try and appeal to than Thor? So I was just drumming and asking, Thor, oh Thor, please bring us sweet, gentle rains. A couple of days later, it rained.
yeah.
Also available for sun dances.
Yeah. So the sun eventually came in, and the rays of the sun swept across the whole cave over about half an hour. And just as it's about to set, it got narrower and narrower until at the end it's just lighting up this big natural monolith of rock. And right at the top, there's this very luminous rock right at the top. So you can see why we're going back there, because I want to scramble up there and see what that's all about.
We couldn't see that at the time. It only showed up in the photos later.
So this only happens at the solstice, but as Sue said before, you know, thousands of years ago someone had also spotted that phenomenon. We call it the solstice chamber. So we're going to go back there. So if you want something to do on and you live up that way, mid-summer solstice sunset, you'll get that for about a fortnight going in that chamber. You want to go about hour and a half before the official sunset time, I would say. So please go and experience it. You'll be in the presence of the ancestors for sure. So just up across the north very quickly, Ramshaw Rocks near Leek, Staffordshire. I mean, talk about into the Dreamtime. This is very hard millstone grit. These things appeared like this, you know, right back, you know, these rocks only weather a couple of centimetres every thousands of years. So we're looking not just at similar things the ancients looked at. Like on Dartmoor, we're actually looking at the rocks they looked at. All these figures looking up to the hill, these big rocks, and this one here is about 20 foot high. He's got like a spliff coming out the side of his mouth.
I call it Buddha on a bad day.
Yeah, I can see that.
It's called the loaf and cheese.
Is this called the
It's the loaf and cheese.
loaf and cheese? Mm.
Have you seen the winking man? No. Winks to you as you're trying to watch it.
Okay.
And the more you have to drink, the more it winks at you.
Yeah,
I should say. Yeah. But yeah, I'm glad you know that side.
Yeah, well, I'm from Leeds, so...
Fantastic. Yeah. What an amazing... And that was quite by accident. We were going up the road north, that straight road that goes past it, and we came around the corner and saw these rocks. We thought, oh my God, scram the brakes on quick. Put the brakes on. So the Dreamtime, unexpectedly, is all over Britain. So Brimham Rocks is another place in Yorkshire Dales. And, well, this is like Simulacra Central, the whole hill managed by the National Trust. I think it's free to go in, though, isn't it? Cafe and cake in the middle.
Park.
And it's got everything. All these millstone grit rocks have weathered up. This one's called the Dancing Bear. This one's called the Sphinx, but we renamed it the Dragon Skull. A lot of fairy folklore associated with the hill. And, of course, these things were visible thousands of years ago by our distant ancestors. Lots of holes for me to scramble in, as is often my wont. This one is called the Druid's Writing Desk.
But I think it looks more like E.T.
Yeah, it does actually.
It does a bit. And this one here is called the this is interesting, even now it's called idle rock. And you've got 200 tons of rock balanced on 18 inches of softer sandstone. So I said to Sue, can you go and lie under there? I mean, it actually looks as if I'm pushing it over, but I'm not. I'm holding it up for you,
Yeah, of
darling.
course,
So
yeah.
I'm holding it up for you to make sure it's safe. So, I mean, what would our ancients thought of this? They would have regarded these as sacred places, for sure. So, whizzing up north now, there's a few sites in Northumberland. This is St Cuthbert's Cave, very famously associated with the Northern Saint. Haunted and devil folklore. It's really a rock shelter, really. We felt we couldn't go straight up. We felt we had to go through this stone with a sleeping face on. And when you got next to it, you realised it had a crevice right through it. That's the way in. That's the way in. And we followed that. And when you go through there to the other side, can you all see the sleeping dragon? You know, nobody mentions this. They're what Paul Devereux calls open secrets. They're there for everybody to see. But when you go underneath, wow, that's when you really realise why Cuthbert was drawn to this place.
Wow.
So talk about being under the
Drumming
belly
dragon.
of the dragon. So we were drumming up the dragon there. And today's pagans and other spiritual people go there as well. We saw some graffiti and signs and votive offerings there. So if I lived up that way, I'm sure I'd be going up there on a regular basis. Open all the time. There's even a car park about a mile away with a little path saying this, because of course it's a pilgrimage place to Christians. So please go to Cuthbert's Cave. It's amazing. Just one, I apologise, there's a load of places in Scotland, just one because time's getting on. Oh, yes, we won't get on. The praying hands of Mary. I mean, things like this occur. There's a great debate. David Cowan, I think, is undecided as well, whether this is a megalith or whether it's an erratic that's just happened to have, because nature does these crazy things, just happens to have put things in that certain position. But certainly we dowse the energies going through there, and it's within sight of Schiehallion, the favourite, the famous fairy mountain of Scotland. I mean, look at the landscape setting, absolutely amazing. This had to go in to Albion Dreamtime, and we realised when we were looking at it that the sun actually rises out of here at equinox.
Sets.
Some sets, I thank you,
Sets,
Sue.
thank you.
Sets into here. I mean, this pregnant tummy of a hill. And there's me dowsing, because David Cowan had written about this and the connection with the energies in that area. Fantastic book, his book about this area. There's me, and there was a very powerful energy line coming right through the gap. But then I turned round and Sue is doing something very, very peculiar.
As you can see, the rock is very layered, and there were some hollow layers behind, and I was just tapping it and getting different sounds. So I was doing a bit of rock music.
Groan. Okay. So just we're nearly finished now. In the book there's a whole chapter about we put forward a new vision for Albion. The Albion Dreamtime project is about connecting with the land from the heart. It's all about intent, and respect, and about challenging ourselves to go beyond our comfort zone.
To receive the land stories, just sit quietly and listen, not with your ears, but with your heart. And be part of the environmental awakening. Do your bit, do your recycling. Think twice about how much you drive your car, aircraft journeys, eating meat and whatever.
We're not telling anybody what to do, we're just saying do us a favour and
Think
question
about it.
yourselves about those aspects. And yeah. So seek out the dream time to receive those fleeting moments of gnosis when the whispers of Gaia, when outside becomes inside, and feel the bliss, sensuality and the caress of pure love that comes from a deeper connecting with the land. Which will also etch our own stories onto the land. All what we do at a sacred site and on the land becomes part of the land's stories after you've left. Isn't that a wonderful thing? Yeah, so we also have to watch that we don't dump stuff on sites and become part of its mythologies, because somebody might roll up in 100 years' time and tune in to what you've been experiencing there. Isn't that wonderful? and simplify as much as you can. We were at D-Fest last week, and at the very end we had the speakers rolled, had to stand up and given a lot of questions, and I hadn't said anything the whole way through the question thing. And then somebody said, it was almost tongue-in-cheek, he said, right panel, can you explain what universal consciousness is? How long have we got? And somebody, very brave lady, tried to explain her take on it. And then it came to me, can you explain what universal consciousness is? And all I could say is, love. That's all I needed to say.
All you need is love. So, we need to send out our love. And sometimes simple, just an honouring is enough. Love and gratitude, wherever we go.
So at this pivotal time of climate emergency, and I will happily have a conversation with anybody in this room who says it's all a conspiracy, beware of my answers is all I can say, that we are being called upon to heal the land. We are. I mean, even if there isn't a climate emergency, the land is still in the right state. So you don't need a climate emergency to be driven to heal the land. So, because people will fight for what they love. The moment as a species we regard the earth as sacred, then we won't possibly let it be destroyed, will we? Because it's sacred to us, just like somebody's holy book. So, and if we can, then just perhaps there might be hope. I'm still on the fence, I'll be honest with you, about the future. I am totally on the fence, and I'm a positive guy.
Personally, we don't waste time on what we cannot change in the world, but we're passionate about what we feel we can. That's why we go out talking to people about it.
So please join us for our workshops, and yes, we will have you dancing.
Dancing?
And doing this. That's us doing our dowsing workshop at Avery. We'd love to do a BSD thing perhaps there. We'll take you into caves, all good fun, and also very powerful. Please join our Albion Dreamtime Facebook page. We've got our conference. I think some of you have already taken flyers, so that got some big names there this year near Avery, Maria Wheatley, Hugh Newman, etc. And just want to plug, please, our latest book, Sensing the Earth. During the first lockdown, everybody was twiddling their thumbs. That was a real That's how they did lockdowns in those days. The first lockdown was a real lockdown, wasn't it? None of these pretend things that came later on. So we were told by Spirit one day, sitting in the stone circle, you've got to write a book. And it's got to be called Sensing the Earth, Messages from the Wisdom Keepers. So we sent 50 invites out to people who, like us, were all stuck at home. And I've about our environmentalists, George Monbiot, some really big names, but also this list I put up is because you'll recognise all of these names. And all these lovely people, including Rory, all wrote a chapter on what their expertise was, but also suggestions about how we can move forward in a post-COVID world. If there ever is one, he says. So Gary Bilcliffe you'll recognise. So again, please have a little flick through that book if you can. So final slide. Finally, what is the point of researching ley lines, earth energies, ancient cultures, etc., unless we do something meaningful with what we find?
The sacred land of dragons. For the dragon is not only in the land, the dragon is the land. And within our hearts we hold the mysteries of the past and the future. When we send out our love to the earth, we'll receive love back, unbounded.
Thanks for listening to what you've had to say. Thank you.